name is Peg Maddocks, and I'm the Director of Learning Solutions on the Cisco Global Education team. I'd like to welcome you to our panel discussion on the important topic of leadership, how leaders lead in the 21st century. Today we have 3 distinguished school superintendents, and we'll be sharing their insights and expertise on the topic with us today. I'm delighted that so many of you could join us. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that you can ask questions. If you look at the slide, you'll look at the lower right portion of the screen. You'll see a little hand. If you click on that hand, you can type in your questions, and we'll answer them at the end. Now I'd like to take a few minutes to welcome our distinguished panel. First, it's my pleasure to introduce Diane Roussel. She's the Superintendent of Schools for Jefferson Parish Public Schools in the greater New Orleans area. Diane has been Director of Instruction, a principal, an assistant principal, and a classroom teacher. After Hurricane Katrina, Diane led her district through a very successful system-wide transformation that involved a strategic realignment of resources and personnel and facilities. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Peg.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Keene. Mark is the Superintendent of Westfield Washington Public Schools in Westfield, Indiana. Before moving to Westfield, Mark served for 27 years in the St. Charles, Missouri School District as an elementary teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, and superintendent. Mark currently serves on the Executive Committee of the American Association of School Administrators, the Advisory Committee of the Center for System Leadership, and the Advisory Committee of the Education Division of the American Society for Quality. Glad to have you here, Mark.
Nice to be here, Peg.
Great. Finally, I'm delighted to introduce to you Mike Lannon. He's the superintendent of St. Lucie County Public Schools in Fort Pierce, Florida. Mike has 40 years of experience in education and serves on 10 education boards. He has taught in Los Angeles and on the Navajo Indian Reservation in New Mexico. He served as community school coordinator and assistant principal at elementary and middle school levels, and as a principal in the high school level. Mike is currently the president of the Urban Superintendents Association of America. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Peg.
It's great to have all of you out there with us today as well. Today our panel will be discussing the following topics. First, leadership in the 21st century, then how they leverage partnerships, and then the students of the 21st century and how we deal with them, and finally how you're going to sustain your vision. So let's get started. We know that our country and our schools are facing some tough economic times. I'm going to begin by asking each of you to talk about what type of leadership is required in this very challenging time. I'd also like you to address the primary strategic goals of your district and some of the barriers you face and how you overcome them. Diane, I'd like to start with you.
Well, I think leadership in time of catastrophe is just a heightened level of what we normally do. And, you know, having done the physical catastrophe, I understand that, but now we're facing maybe an economic financial catastrophe. And what does that mean? Superintendents are pulled in many directions each and every day, and they're bombarded. So this bombardment just requires us to stay even more focused, and our goal and our objective is to protect the core, the vision, and the mission. And regardless of what you have to cut, protecting that is sacred. If you truly believe you're on the right path, protect it at all costs. Keep it sacred, keep it of utmost importance. But this crisis also, because it comes with money, presents some other interesting opportunities. It is an opportunity, just like Katrina was for me, to recreate, to use these funds and what's happening in this time to create a school system that you would create if you truly had your way. And used strategically, this could be an opportune time for individual school systems and in this country. If that common theme is there, you now have the chance to do things either to support your vision and mission because you truly believe you have the right one, or to change it. And I think it just requires a lot of focus. We all face challenges, as you know. And our challenges can be everything from financial to political to, to just maneuvering the system. Superintendent's roles, in my eyes, we have to believe it can be done, convince others it can be done, and then work with them to get it done. And we're also the people that look for the funding, look for the right people in the right places, putting them in the right places to get it done. And a superintendent has to clear the path, as I say, and sometimes we have to push from behind to get it done. But our challenges can be legislative, they can be bureaucratic, they can be all kinds of challenges, including the economic ones. But again, it's remembering what is sacred and important in the core, and remembering our moral imperative to serve all children, and the weight and responsibility of that. I have 46,000 children depending on me, and so I take it very seriously, and I think most of us do. Peg, and your third point was, I believe...
Well, we wanted to know about your strategies that you're really focusing on right now, and you talked about your challenges, but what are your major specific strategies?
I believe we are, in Jefferson Parish, on the right path. We seized the opportunity to reconstruct, reinvent our school system post-Katrina. We could have rebuilt it the same way. But what we're focusing on is creating truly engaging work, rigorous engaging work, using technology as a tool, and addressing 21st century skills. Our challenges in that arena have been knocked down little by little. We have stuck with it. We have had partners help us. But most of it, when you deal with technology, you have to deal with fear, fear of what it opens up for children. You have to have school board support. That's a challenge, getting them on board to understand how important this is and what it means to this type of learner. And then you have to convince the community that it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So once you get those pieces into place, and teachers, in order to change, I have an aging teaching staff, and so this technology has actually breathed new life into them. At first, we had to convince, and we did. And then the new teachers coming out are tech savvy. We just have to get out of their way. But those are basically our challenges.
Mark, how about you on leadership and some of your strategies and barriers?
Yeah, I think that the people often forget that we've always operated with fiscal constraints. This is nothing new for us. We have limited budgets. In fact, I always tell people I think some of the best business minds in the country are in public schools because we always do more with limited funding. And given that, a lot of times, particularly now with everybody being worried about the economy, communication to make sure that people can be assured that we're doing the best we can do with their dollars and that we're spending them wisely, and we look carefully and think twice before spending just to reinforce that their dollar is going to go as far as it can when it comes to the school systems. We've got 3 strategic objectives. They won't change. We focus on student achievement. I won't go into the sub-goals under that, but that's one focus area. The second one is student safety and welfare, and we're always going to focus on that and make sure the schools are the safest place they can be for students so they can learn. And then fiscal responsibility. And we really have a 4-year budget plan, and we can modify it as we go through. And we're always looking at, if we do something today, what does that mean 2 years from now, 3 years from now, so that we always know what the impacts of those are going to be going forward. We've got a very supportive population in our district. We're a rapidly growing district. People are moving to our district, and surveys from both our city people and from ourselves have shown that they're coming to our district because of the educational opportunities that their students have. We don't have a lot of barriers. The biggest barrier we have is, and it's not really a barrier, it's a problem from the standpoint of we have so many parents wanting to help us in our schools. We have to figure out things to do for them and make it meaningful. So it's a really
bad problem to have.
It's a nice problem to have. So that's a challenge that we have, but other than that, right now, people generally leave us alone because our performance is such a high level.
That's great. Mike, how about you?
Well, thanks, Peg. I think that much of what Diane and Mark have said are true in almost all school systems, and I know they are for us. The issue about leadership is, I think, the most compelling issue facing public schools, because it's about transformation and design. I think leaders have to be design leaders. They have to be thought leaders, and they have to be ethical and moral leaders in the 21st century, more than ever before. And Diane, you said it. Now we have the opportunity to be able to really look at coming up with a different kind of design to offer to the public in America about education, so that we don't just measure basic skills or the lowest level at an assessment device that was actually created nearly a century ago. And that's basically what all of our state tests are like. Our driving instruction. We need to be able to look at the world and understand where America needs to be. And superintendents have to be the leaders that then build the capacity inside their own school systems for building principals, assistant principals, teacher leaders, parent leaders, and civic leaders, all to be able to say, yes, there's a common vision here for our community. In St. Lucie County, Florida, we're a community that is in the midst of cultural change. we were an agricultural community that is moving to become part of what Florida refers to as our research coast. And so the expectations for boys and girls and for the employees of the school system, all the leaders there, have to change along with that. And the things that were very fine, perhaps, in the 20th century are absolutely inappropriate for the 21st. And so superintendents, in my view, have to provide the leadership that will build the capacity to be able to move a school system into a new culture. And for us, it's the culture of increased high-level, high-wage, high-tech jobs, to be able to have our children go through our school system and be able to come back with a workforce. So we have to lead into fields that we weren't really trained to, but that means that we partner and parallel with folks like economic developers, chambers of commerce, and the industry that's available to us locally and that which we can reach out to in the future.
Right.
So it's a very exciting time for leadership. The strategic goals of our system are just as Mark spoke about. It's student achievement, student achievement, student achievement, fiscal responsibility, and the ever issue of student and staff safety in a world that's far different than our grandfathers and grandmothers' day.
Certainly is.
And schools are safe havens. And they are places for mind exercise and intellectual capacity and capital to build and work within itself. So as we start to look at changing the school systems from the seat time and the credit accumulation and all of those rules and regulations that are put upon professionals by other superordinates, like legislators and legislatures and other parts of our society, we ought to advocate for changing that. Give us the end result that you want us to achieve, and then free us of those mandates of how to do it, and let the profession be charged with finding the ways that will enhance learning for each boy and girl in their own learning style, and let teachers and school leaders, principals, assistant principals, and teacher leaders build that capacity as we move forward. I think it's very exciting to be able to build that.
So building on that and referring back to what Diane had said earlier about this particular time, I'll refer to the stimulus package. What are your thoughts on the stimulus package? And I'll just take a couple of minutes to just, I'll ask Mark to start. What are your thoughts on how this stimulus package is going to impact your district?
Well, from what we know at this point in time, and it's still a little bit nebulous, we know we're going to get money over a 2-year period of time, and it's going to go away. So we have to be very careful about doing anything that will create recurring expenditures down the road. So it's not going to be a bunch of new things coming out of the box that then 2 years from now we have to figure out how to sustain. So I think probably we'll look at ways that we can do one-time expenditures so we can actually comply with the mandate of helping to stimulate the economy and get it moving again. So we have to do some expenditures. And we would probably see that in the area of technology, where we can come up with something that will impact our students and help build the capacity for students to learn more effectively and efficiently. What that's going to be will be dependent upon how much money there is and an analysis of what it is we can do.
Right.
But that's the area seems to be the most probable area for us to use the money in as we move over the next couple of years.
Good. Same thoughts from you, Mike?
Well, some. Clearly, I think technology has a great opportunity. We began in St. Lucie County several years ago we created a template for every classroom in technology. That this is the standard. This is what every classroom will have. And until the economy tanked, we were moving along very nicely, making those adjustments. We've got about 1,800 of 2,500 classrooms fully equipped. So I'd like to be able to take that money and do as Mark said, make sure that across the board, all of our classrooms for students and teachers have the technology that we believe is appropriate. I'd also like to be able to use the money, and I was really pleased to see it come this way. Much of it in terms of IDEA and Title I money is to overcome issues that boys and girls bring to school. So to be able to focus, even if it's for a short period of time, on some enhancements for them, to be able to get down into communities and get, even if it's only 2 years of 3-year-olds, to be able to bring them in and provide more things to them. We may invent things with community partners to take that education out into the communities more. I think that that's an available option, especially under the Title I provisions, so that we're looking at being able to provide more SES services, or more services to low SES families. And then the third thing is, in Florida, we're in a massive recession, and my school budget, the operating budget, will have a $70 million hit between this current school year and next year. This stimulus package may buy us a year for many of our employees who we've invested in, we've built the capacity in, and like Diane was saying in her opening statement, our core business is the creation of engaging work by teachers for students to do, and to do that every day in every course. Teachers have to be trained how to do that. We have a massive public outlay of resources in the training of those folks. We don't want to lose them.
Right.
And so we're hoping that maybe this will buy us a little bit of time, delay those awful decisions, or at least mitigate them to a degree, and then allow our communities to start coming back and be able to stand on their own feet again.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that?
Briefly, yes. I would say that stuff is good. It's good to buy technology, but that in isolation doesn't do it. So each of us sitting here have gone down the road somewhat, some of us more than others, understanding that with technology, professional development is key. Coaching from experts is key. You have to have it. And then lesson redesign is key to address the needs of the learner that we have now. So I think if people are considering uses for that money, those components also have to be considered in this.
Whole package.
The whole package.
Holistic solutions. Great. So let's change the subject a little bit, although all three of you have mentioned partnerships in your previous statements. So, Mark, how do you leverage partnerships in your district, and what kinds of partnerships do you have?
Well, my viewpoint of schools and school leadership is that we are community builders. So I look at partnerships as a community effort to get different groups together to build a community to a larger degree than any of us could do by itself. So we have numerous partnerships with our city, with our library, and then we have some private partnerships too with other key suppliers and supports. But what we always look at is can we do something with somebody else that will create a win for one side or the other, a loss for neither, a win for one, and if it can be a win for both, then we're way ahead. And we've been able to do that. So that's what we look at. And by working together, we reduce costs, we increase efficiencies, and then we're able to do even more within the community to really create a larger system. And the people in the community see, oh my goodness, the city's working with the school, it's working with the library, and they think government really can talk to each other and work together, so it creates a nice situation. But we have people coming to us to form partnerships. We go to them, but the key is always somebody has to win and nobody can lose.
And you have a key partnership with your city?
We have a very key partnership with our city. Yeah, we've done a number of things. I'll give you one quick example. We have a major transportation facility. Obviously, we have a bus fleet that we run. We have mechanics that service those buses. We have a huge diesel capacity and a huge gasoline capacity. We don't use much gas. The city needs a lot of gas. They need their police cars and their fire trucks serviced. They've employed us to do the servicing of their vehicles, pay us to do that. We needed an extra mechanic, so we were able to hire a mechanic to do that and to additionally do some work on our buses. So they save money on servicing their vehicles. They get gas at a reduced price. We get to add a mechanic that we need. We utilize the capacity in the transportation center completely, and we have more by doing it together than we would have had separately.
That's fantastic. Mike, how about you in partnerships in St. Lucie?
Well, Mark just talked about, I think it's great public policy, and sometimes I think that school folks have to be able to step out of the 3 R's and be able to talk about those kinds of things, of merging with other leaders, because we are building that full sense of community. That's what one of the great benefits of American public education is it is the glue that can hold community together. So partnerships like Mark's exist in St. Lucie County. We partner with our law enforcement agencies from our cities and our county for school resource officers, and we share those costs. We use them for 180 days, then the rest of the year they're available for law enforcement in general. Instead of building stadia at each of our high schools, our our school board years ago worked with our county and cities and created regional parks so that there was not the cost individually of the stadia, and the community got to use it as well under the management of the county most of the time. So those kinds of things go on. All the schools, and I'm sure this is the same way in all of our districts, have massive numbers of partnerships, some with very small entities or individuals that support the work that we all do. And then there's the corporate partnerships that we have, whether they be with Cisco or we have one with Panasonic. We have others with Houghton Mifflin and River Deep. And those, we've changed the world to be able to say, we won't go into a partnership if it's a vendor relationship. We want to change that to a partner-to-partner relationship, and that must bring value to both sides. And then it's greater commitment, there's greater ownership from both to make sure that whatever it is we've agreed to will be successful, rather than just a money for a product kind of vendor relationship. So we're trying to change that equation.
Diane, how about you? Do you have some specific examples of how you
first
leverage partnerships?
I would like to say that for public schools to survive and thrive, the wall has got to come down. It can't be, this is my domain, and then there's the rest of the world. And I think that's what they're alluding to. In Jefferson Parish, we have some huge national and international partnerships, as you probably already know. We also have local partnerships, shipbuilders, welders that train our kids and come on campus, and then we supply a workforce for them, and the film industry in Louisiana. Everybody knows Benjamin Button by now. Our children are actually designing sets. They asked for some enthusiastic geeks to do animation. So their 7th period is on the movie set, and we have several different kinds of partnerships. I think when we talk about that, those can be financial. They run the gamut, as Mike said. They can be legislative. They can be the community builders in the community. They're with the movers and shakers, people you wouldn't even expect, like in Applebee's America. You find the key people that can support and bring things forward and that help you understand what a school system could be and how they view it.
Great. Now let's get on to the challenging and exciting part of this conversation, the students. So we all know that the students of today, and I have one, my son, are very different from any generation of students. A lot having to do with the technology that they have access to, but also their whole social networking. Give me your views. We'll start with Mike on students of today and how you deal with them, and the fact that they can access so much information and really are kind of far ahead of the rest of us in terms of their abilities.
Peg, you've said that correctly. I believe they are far ahead of us. And if you look at just the personal piece, many of us have children or grandchildren, and I have a 5-year-old grandson that Pamela and I walked in on a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon just to drop in and visit. And he was standing at his computer and interacting with it. Now, he's 5. When we were 5, what were we doing? It certainly wasn't anything like that. So today's world of students and youth are, as in the words of others, they're screenagers. They've always interacted with a screen. They learn differently, and now neuroscience is able to prove to us that their brain actually processes information differently. And so as we build the schools of the future, as we build those engaging lessons of the future, I'm brought back to Diane's phrase when she talked about you have to have professional development. Professional development is absolutely key, because most of our teaching force are not the digital natives. They're those digital immigrants, as I believe Ian Jukes or some other people have phrased that. And so we've got to get ahead of the curve, because some kids have said, when I come to school, life slows down. Well, if we're going to really meet the needs of the 21st century so that people have a lifestyle, that they are able to compete with the international world of, as Friedman says, everything's flattened. Well, it's not flat yet, but is flattening. And our children have to be able to be highly competitive in that digital world, and we are not the most comfortable age group to be doing that. So we've got to really be cognizant of the fact that A, they learn differently, B, they've got tools available to them at ages we never had before, and that because they do, the very brain function is different. And we have to convince our communities that we have to teach in a different way. We have to teach our teaching force and our leadership that we must bring that product differently so that it more appropriately mirrors what kids are doing outside of school. There's a study that I learned about today from the University of Rochester that says that 87% of today's learners are visual kinesthetic learners, but the assessment devices are text, and that today's children are motivated by colors in different ways than we were. Boys, hot red; girls, pink, then flowing down to lime green and then burnt orange. The least motivating colors for them are white with black on it, and that's what most of our tests are.
Sure.
They're white paper with black print. So we have to be able to seek the world of science and research and bring all of our people on board. Now, also it was mentioned earlier that our younger teachers come to us with an innate knowledge that they're very comfortable in this world because in many cases they are digital natives. We've got to be able to have them lead, and that's a real shift in the way we do business. But I think that's the opportunity we now find ourselves in. We are about to have the opportunity of making a real shift, whether we make it or not. That's up to us.
Good. That's a good point about the teachers. We don't want to lose them because they have to power down too when they get into school. Diane?
Peg, I'm wearing the right color.
Oh, yeah. I thought of that when he said that.
These children are not linear learners. I mean, the sitting in the row and having the information that they get be so controlled and delivered equally to all of them is gone. Anybody who still believes that, just look at their faces. Take a poll of engagement, what they find engaging and what they don't. Mike's hit on a lot of it. But they grow up that way. I have a 5-year-old nephew who is language delayed because he was a premature boy. And you have to see him with the technology. It is actually supplemented, and he can do it. And he will catch up with the rest. But to know that's the way they are tech savvy. They demand technology, and as they will tell you, we're doing it anyway. So you might as well do your lessons in wikis and blogs. You might as well do it that way and create networks that they can communicate with and on. It's very natural to them. And they will also tell you, if you ask some of the little ones, like, this laptop is part of my brain. I mean, they do not leave it. And watching them, we have got to stop stripping them of all that technology when they come, or powering down.
Right.
You know, the iPods have a use, the cell phones have a use. We've had these discussions. We might have to figure out the cell phone use, but with the flip cameras and the laptops, technology takes on many, many more forms for these children.
And your students are teaching your teachers how to use technology, I
Yes,
hear.
in some instances, correct.
Right.
And some of my other teachers are the leaders in it. They have embraced it. Some with 35, 36 years, it's been new life breathed in. They've decided to stay.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I always think back to when I was in school and in U.S. history, we'd get to the Korean War and time would end because it came to June and school was out. Then you start thinking, well, what are they going to do in 30 years because they can't get past Korea no matter what. And we've had to get out of that mindset because the kids come to school with the ability to access information. I mean, they Google on their cell phones.
Right.
So they can get the information. Our job is to teach them how to apply, analyze, use that information, what's good information, what's not good information, how to discriminate between those. And yet, I think Mike alluded to it, we're kind of mired legislatively in a cognitive regurgitation of facts and figures and stuff like that to show how much students have learned. And it's incumbent upon us, and we do fight for Let's measure student growth. Let's measure how students can apply. Let's measure how they can create. Let's measure how engaged they are and how they can do things that are going to really be productive in the future. It's the socialization, the ability to work in groups, the ability to create that's going to reinvent this country's economy. We've got to be help prepare those kids for that. We can't prepare them for whether the capitals of the 50 states, because that becomes irrelevant in this day and age.
So getting back to what Mike was saying, the assessment, the high-stakes testing, all of that is really driving the wrong behaviors. We've got legislatures that are driving the wrong metrics. And so I'm sure you see that we need a holistic system transformation.
Absolutely.
To make this happen. We can do the little things in the classroom, but to actually make the big changes that we need.
Right. We have a technology department. That's so we can teach technology, but we need to teach our teachers how to integrate that in. And of course, one of the things we always say is we want our kids to be able to use the technology in the classroom. So the teachers are the facilitators of the kids' learning, not teachers stand up in front with one thing showing them how to do it. The kids want their hands on that. I mean, they are kinesthetic for sure. Learn by doing. And if you don't know how to do something, give a kid 10 minutes and they'll figure out how to do it and tell you how to do it. So,
do you want to add anything, Mike?
Yeah, I did. I think that it's really incumbent upon us as school leaders and community leaders to be able to expand the interface that we have with our political leaders, because I think that's where we have a disconnect. Fareed Zakaria said about a year ago in an article that I recall, he had interviewed the Minister of Education of Singapore, I believe it was. And in that, they were talking about the fact that the United States is going, in their opinion, was going in exactly the wrong direction in terms of our assessment. What we're assessing in basic skills testing and what was all set up for No Child Left Behind in AYP are none of the skills that Mark was referencing that are needed in the 21st century. The business consortium across the country has already said we need networking and researchers and communicators. None of those things are measured on the type of testing that we do. The Minister of Education said, we are trying to become more like you, and you are coming backwards to be like us. And he said, the genius of American education has been your complexity and what you have brought about through invention. He said, if you look at all of the Nobel Prize winners and Pulitzer Prize winners around the Asian Rim, you aren't going to find very many. And you can't count how many you have in the United States.
Very interesting.
And that goes to that engaging work, that sense of imagination and innovation, the place where we've got to be able to go, because we're a knowledge economy now. And that's what we must be able to build for the future.
Right, right. Great.
And look, can I just say,
sure.
too, we, in our districts, measure the creativity and the multiple intelligence and everything. It's the mandates that we have that are the measurement tools, or the things that we have to try to do. But we don't just collapse and just only do those things. We're still pushing kids to be creative and innovative and
well, I know that about you all, and that is fantastic that you're going to be measuring those skills. No matter what, you'll be ready for that, and you'll also be great influencers of change. Both at the local, state, and national levels. So I'm really pleased that you are doing that, making those changes and assessing those things, and you can learn from that. So you are visionary leaders, all three of you, clearly, and you've really thought through everything that you do, from community partnerships to just strategic goals that don't go away every year and start over. So what I'd like to ask you now is how you will maintain your vision, sustain your vision in your district and in your community once you go on to a new stage in your life. Diane?
Well, I think we all realize the work will never end. There's not a completion date for this kind of work. It just continues. What I view as important is that your core people need to understand and have the same vision and believe it. Not only just have it, believe it. And it's important to have not just one generation, the next person behind you, but even the next one, or a group of people, at least, a core of people who can carry it regardless of what happens. And I found my people by watching them work. I found them, they didn't interview, pretty much. I found them by listening to what they valued, how important children were, how they felt the responsibility that we are determining what children can and can't do. And the whole scenario of, even though we used some different words, synonyms, when we first met, we were all in the same place. And we have cultivated that. And I think it's more than one person who could step up. It has to be a core of people who can keep it going, who believe in it, and know how to move it forward.
Great. Mark?
In the 12 years I've been in my district, I've hired every administrator but one. 80% of our teaching staff has been hired in that period of time. We spend a lot of time and a lot of effort on structured interview process, identifying talent and selecting the right talent. And we hire people for who they are, not what they can do. We can train people to do things, but you can't change a person in what they are. So it's very important to us to hire people for what they are. And we consider everybody we hire in a classroom $1.5 million hire, because if they stay with us for 30 years, we're going to spend $1.5 million on just salary alone. So that's a critical investment. And my belief is my vision will continue on, because we're hiring the people who have the inner core, who are going to continue doing what it is we're doing regardless. We know a mission may change a little bit. We know processes are going to change a little bit. Some products may change. There'll be different mandates that come down. But internally, for the next 25 to 30 years, a lot of people are going to continue to do exactly what the vision is today, because that's their vision, too. That's the kind of person they are.
Great. Mike?
When I came to St. Lucie County 5 years ago, I came walking in looking for what kind of prop will I have. And I'd just finished reading that summer Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And so I walked in. I guess Jim probably owes me a lot of royalties because ultimately lots of people in St. Lucie County read Good to Great. What we tried to do was to create a set of core beliefs. From the beliefs came the vision, came the mission, came the strategies. And in those beliefs, it was important to have wide-based support, and everyone does that. But we took the beliefs, and the board bought into those and made them policy. We changed the way that we collectively bargain. Florida is a collective bargaining state, and we became collaborative bargainers in shared interest-based bargaining, so that we have mutual responsibility, because that fits one of our beliefs, that we are mutually responsible for one another's success. And that may mean additional training, it may mean emotional pickup, it may mean any number of things, but it is the 4 belief statements that upon which everything now happens in St. Lucie. The prime piece of that is that all children can learn and learn more than they currently are. And that we stole something from the Panasonic Foundation. Their phrase is, all means all, and there are no exceptions. And so those kinds of moral pieces, the fabric that have been woven into the culture, and I believe that leaders create culture. They modify it, mitigate it, create it in some cases. But our board has seen that's what they felt their moral imperative was to change the entire environment of our community through a change in culture led by education. And I think that's sustainable no matter who's in, as long as the board stays with a succession plan of leaders who can buy into that. And I think it's like Diane said, they must watch people work and see what their beliefs are, and then hire them that way over time. And I think that is sustainable that way.
That's great. A lot of consistency among all 3 of you in terms of how you're doing this. It's great. Thanks so much for all your ideas. We have a couple of questions from the audience. Get ready. As a superintendent, how can you affect the change that needs to be made in the classroom to engage today's students? So you talked about that a little bit, but what kinds of things are happening in your schools that are different from what you were doing, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, that engage the student?
The vocabulary is different. The culture is different. The conversations are different.
With the students?
Yes, they're very different. And just the communication level has become much more expansive, I would say. I mean, decisions aren't just made in isolation. And if you look at, changing things and how do you get to that point, well, first you create discontent with the status quo. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, and some people know that, it may be in the back of their mind instead of the front of their mind, but trying and facilitating that to happen. And I think then you have to value and measure, because we're not going to get away from measurement. What we know it's right to value and measure, and what's needed now.
Right.
I think the biggest changes occurred in our district, and we've put the Schlechte framework within the Baldrige framework, so we measure about everything that moves, and we have things going on. A lot of the people that we hire are what I'd call our trailblazers. They'll try anything for us. But the biggest thing has been listening to the voice of the student. Mm-hmm. And our teachers now, when they do things, will talk to the students and say, tell me how that was for you. Did you like that? Did you not like that? What would you change? And the kids are telling them what engaged them, what didn't engage them, so when the teachers are planning future lessons, they can go back and try to infuse those things into it. And we have some teachers who are in project measurement projects with us, and we're actually doing it with Promethean boards and active votes and everything to give them the quantitative data. But the teachers have found that if they ask the kids will give honest feedback and tell them what they need to do better. And the teachers want to do it then, because they want a classroom that's got kids really excited about what's going on.
That's great.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues on both those points. And the work of Phil Schlechte has really guided a lot of our thinking, and that's very clear. The voice of students and being able to design an environment. I mean, I keep coming back to that word design, because I learned a better understanding of that through work with Phil and George Thompson, as we all have over the years. But being able to design an environment where teachers are free of adverse consequences in trying new things, to be able to create learning communities, and be able to take learning communities of teachers so that they can explore and expand their craft by sharing with one another, but critiquing one another, being able to build their capacity that way, and then taking the classroom and designing it differently to be able to accommodate technology, learning styles, learning space, using all of those things in different ways, and then that massive amount of training that has to take place. I think that I recall Bill Gates saying about a decade ago that Microsoft and most of the American major corporations devote about 30 cents on a dollar to research and development, and schools about 5 cents on a dollar. But I think most of us have really reinvested in our people, understanding that you have to build trust and capacity of our teachers and those who work with children. The principals have to be massively trained in 21st century leadership. We have to build a cadre of people coming out of the teacher ranks or otherwise for assistant principalships and then into district office. So I think it can be done, but it's about changing the way that we do all that we do.
I'd like to add just two brief things. One is that, we force children to come to school. They have to come to school. And what we all understand is they volunteer their time and attention. And how do you get them into time and attention and not just passive behavior or even belligerent behavior? We call them customers. They're our customers. And what are we going to do for our customers? And the second thing that strikes me is what we're asking teachers to do is employ 21st century skills. We're asking them now to collaborate, not to be just in their own rooms. We're asking them to creatively solve problems. We're asking all of those skills that they will be modeling, as we are modeling those behaviors for them. And the children understand that already. But it's just harnessing that and making it into meaningful and important lessons that they must learn.
And the support of all three of you, I know personally that you walk the talk with not only technology but 21st century collaboration and all of that kind of thing. I'm sure that makes a big difference in the change that you expect from your teachers and your staff. I have one more question, and the question is, how do you engage your broader community in the work you do? Can you give me some examples of some strategies you use to get the community to understand what it is you're doing?
Well, our vocabulary can be kind of foreign to people. We have acronyms like everyone else, but I can tell you this, when they knew Cisco, they know the name Cisco and Schletke, and that we're doing those two things. And I can be in the grocery store and they'll go, how's that Cisco thing going? They don't know what it is exactly. But we now have a plan, after the infrastructure, after everything is in place, they are now a part of that. We have a community design team, along with, central office people and individual school design teams. But we bring them in. There is a dedicated education person on the Chamber of Commerce. He's with us at our trainings, everything. So they have bought into it, and they actually come to the trainings, besides the information we relay to them in print form and in forms of strategic plans and other things in language that they would understand, that doesn't use all the acronyms. But communication is huge. It takes a lot of time. It has to be consistent. The message has got to be simple enough that it can be given in 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or 30 minutes, depending on the audience. And once you get the lesson simple enough, they know about creating truly engaging work using technology as a tool. I can go pretty much any place and they get that part. But they understand that. And when they understand the concepts in terms that, it's like when somebody says, how's your day going? They don't really want to hear the whole thing. They just need the bit that gets them so they understand the premise of what's going on.
So briefly, just a couple of other ideas on how you involve the community?
Same thing. Is leadership design teams decide how they're going to deploy a lot of things out and how they're going to inform.
Right.
And we're so involved in our communities, in the Chamber of Commerce, in various social organizations. So the parents are getting it. The community people who don't have kids in the school are getting it. We direct a lot of things to the website. We calculate hits. We try to do everything, but the language is consistent and it's simple. My community relations director is not an educator. We want her writing everything because she'll write it the way she can understand it, so therefore the people in the community can understand it. So it's not pedagogical. It's normal speak. So we really try to keep it simple, keep it consistent, and keep it focused.
Great. Mike?
Yeah, we try to become more inclusive and bring people into the system. We have two large minority groups in our school system that previously had not been represented: our Hispanic population, which has nearly doubled in size in the last 5 years, and a Haitian population. We now have advisory councils from both that report. I report to them, but I asked them to form and be able to come together so we could bring them into the schools. Working with economic developers and chamber people is a standard, but also the use of ITV. We're fortunate that we have a series of channels on our cable systems. We have our own TV opportunity. We broadcast our board meetings so we can talk to our communities that way. Our principals are more and more into podcasting. Everybody's got websites. So being able to get that word out, to be able to invite people in, the use of telecommunications that hit the entire community in 15 minutes with a singular message, and can also do polling so that we can quickly grasp the feel on an issue in the community if that's necessary. All of those things that we all do, and if we brainstormed, we could come up with a great long list. But I think what public schools are right now is that we are trying to build a greater sense of community through greater inclusion, greater transparency, greater openness, and using a whole host of devices to do so.
That's fantastic. Great. Lots of technology in there.
Yes, there is.
Great. Great. Thank you so much, all three of you, for spending the time with us today. It's been really terrific, and lots of great ideas, as well as some visionary and strategic thinking as well. So thank you so much for coming. I'd like to tell the audience that this broadcast will be posted on our website, GETideas.org. It's a public service website that Cisco sponsors, and it's an online community for leaders so that you can get together and collaborate and use all those tools we talked about today to help on education transformation. So go ahead and visit GetIdeas.org, and thank you so much, all of you out there, for coming to our session today and watching it, and also, of course, finally to you again for spending the time with us today. Thanks.
Welcome. Pleasure.